Have you ever met someone who just doesn't seem to add up? Where their public self feels completely different from the work they create, or maybe the stories you hear about them. Well, let's dive into that because it's a puzzle we all run into, and today we're gonna crack the code. Okay, so take the Austrian painter Egon Schiele. People who knew him said he was shy, quiet, kind of reserved. But then you look at his art. Wow. It is raw, it's anxious, and it's just buzzing with this turbulent psychological energy. The bodies are all twisted, the lines are sharp, it is anything but quiet. So this brings us to the big question, right? How does a quiet person create something so loud? Is this some kind of contradiction, a hypocrisy? Or is there something deeper going on that we're just not seeing? So yeah, let's treat this exactly like a puzzle. We're gonna find the clues, we'll identify the hidden force at play, and we're gonna solve this thing together. And this isn't just about famous artists, not at all. You've probably seen it yourself. Think about that calm, connected colleague who tells you they have intensely chaotic dreams. Or the stoic friend who you find out writes this incredibly passionate poetry. This mismatch between an inner world and an outer expression. It is literally everywhere. To start solving this whole thing, we first need to define the pieces of the puzzle. So let's break it down into two key components. You've got the inside and you've got the outside. Let's give these two pieces some clearer names. We can call our internal world, all our feelings, our drives, our inner conflicts, let's call that our motion. And then we can call the stuff we can actually see, our speech, our art, our behavior, we'll call that our form. So the puzzle is really about why our motion and our form don't always line up, which, of course, leads to the next big question. If our internal state doesn't just flow directly out into the world, what's standing in between? What's the bridge, or maybe it's a barrier that connects our inner motion to our outer form? This is the really crucial part of the mystery. See, there's a hidden force at play, a missing piece that honestly explains everything. And that missing piece, it isn't a thing and it isn't a person. It's a pressure. It's called the constraint operator. Now think of it like a set of invisible pressures that filter and shape and sometimes completely warp our inner motion before it ever becomes our outer form. It is the reason what we feel isn't always what we show. And these constraints, they're all around us. Social expectations tell you not to yell in a meeting, even if you're furious. Professional norms, they demand a certain kind of behavior at work. In art, genre rules shape what a portrait or a novel is supposed to look like. Heck, even just being tired can act as a constraint on how you express yourself. Okay, so this constraint operator, it doesn't just block our inner world. No, it actively reshapes it. And it tends to do so in 6 predictable patterns. And once you see them, I promise you are going to start spotting them everywhere. Let's walk through these. First, you've got clamping. That's just straight up suppressing an emotion, like biting your tongue in a meeting when you're angry. Then there's rerouting. That's where the feeling gets channeled somewhere private and safe, like ranting about your day in a diary. Template forcing is when you conform to a role, like a manager putting on a formal leader's voice that isn't really theirs. Inversion is a fascinating one. It's showing the opposite emotion, like acting super confident before a presentation when you're actually terrified. And finally, there's phase lag. That's when the true feeling leaks out later, like snapping at your family after a long, stressful day. And rebound, which is when a thought you try to suppress just comes back even stronger. So now, let's take this whole framework and apply it back to our original puzzle, Egon Schiele. This is where it all clicks into place. On the left, we've got Schiele's raw, anxious self-portrait. On the right, a composed, almost stately self-portrait by Rembrandt from a few centuries earlier. Look, they're both artists looking at themselves. So why are the results, the forms, so radically different? Well, the answer is the constraints. Rembrandt's form was shaped by things like professional status and the established rules of portrait painting. His goal was to create a public legacy. Schiele's constraints were basically the opposite. He was driven to explore his inner psychology, to intentionally break conventions. So the same inner motion, self-reflection, was projected through totally different constraints, and it created completely different art. So here's the crucial point, the real takeaway. The mismatch between the quiet person and their turbulent art, it's not a contradiction at all. In a world full of strong constraints, a mismatch is exactly what we should predict. When the pressure is high, the output is going to be warped. And this gives us a really powerful new way to look at the world,
to understand the people around us and, yeah, even ourselves.
This is the core idea, and it is absolutely worth repeating. Form is a projection of motion through constraints. What we see isn't a direct photograph of someone's inner world, no way. It's more like a shadow puppet on the wall, shaped by the light and by the hands that are getting in the way. So next time you see that mismatch, that quiet person with the loud art, the serious boss who tells goofy jokes at home, don't just write it off as a contradiction. Ask yourself, what are the hidden constraints here? What pressures are shaping this person's expression in this exact moment? It's a completely new lens for understanding why people do what they do. Now that you see the code behind the mismatch, where do you think you'll spot it first? In your workplace? Your family? Or maybe even in the mirror?